Yeah. And when I took it from that was like, I have no idea what you said will be like, oh yeah, boost don't even take that much. Like, sometimes it's like that you really, there's like,
It's important to have
Hand
your hand in it, right? Yeah. There's that observation.
Right.
On track, right?
And that's who Chanel. Yeah, moving.
oh,
Welcome, everybody. One of our number just had a baby. Congratulate Rebecca. Oh, she's asked to be excused today for good reason. We'll start with the announcement and a word of prayer by our own Jesse.
It's a title. What do you want first?
Announcement.
Just to clarify something about scholarships for those of you who are applying. Friday, still have time to do it. We didn't award any money for spring and summer 2023, so even if you think you got awarded money, you didn't. So if you're planning to go to school for summer, apply for spring, summer, and fall. If you're not going to one of those, don't do it, but it's available to apply for spring, summer, and fall. Does that make more sense?
Does anyone have a question? Talking money.
Already submitted it, but you did not the spring one because you thought you'd already done it. Can you resubmit?
Yeah, if you meant to, you can probably even just email me with the info you would have put in for spring. All right. Father in heaven, we are so grateful for this beautiful day, for the way the world is dressed in white, and we are grateful to gather together and to have these friendships, and we ask thee to bless our day and our week with inspiration and joy and gratitude. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you. And we thank Jessie for all she does for all of us. I just want you to know, IPSO is the only true living graduate program here on campus to make potatoes its featured dish. So everybody pull out your phones and make sure you have this IPSO event, your phone on March 16th at 6 p.m. And may I volunteer to be the taster?
Yes, we actually need some faculty judges.
Okay. Just, you know, they all won. They were all really good because they're potatoes. No. Very good. Any announcements? Anything else from IPSO? We appreciate all IPSO does. We appreciate their newsletter. We appreciate all the fun activities. Are you still doing your study buddy on Thursday? That typically, yeah, so. Good. Anybody else have any other announcement they'd like to make? Anybody here visiting for the first time that would like to be embarrassed? Or, somebody else embarrass you? Very good. Well, Jessie tells me she also worked for Sarah. Isn't it? And Chanel is one of our own freelance instructional designer, the dream of dreams. No hours, do whatever you want, whenever you want, get paid big bucks. You know, this is the dream of all instructional scientists, right? She'll correct me, I'm sure, but we're grateful for her and one of our own alumni coming to us from back east and giving us another insight and perspective on the real world of instructional design. So the time is yours. Now, please feel free to introduce yourself, and we again thank you for taking time in your busy schedule to be with us today.
No, thank you so much. And I hear from that prayer that your world is in white, which is very different from ours over here right now. But I'm glad that some people get to enjoy the snow. So for us today, myself and the wonderful Sarah Blake. Oh, I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah, we can hear you over Zoom.
Us though.
Yeah.
They can,
We can hear on Zoom.
All right, should I just wait a second?
Set up how it should be. Okay.
Need to unmute the.
No, and you
clock. Oh,
thought being
awesome.
in person would be the better option, but
I heard her at the beginning.
I don't know why it's not working. Can you try speaking again?
oh yeah, testing, testing, we'll make it through.
Yay.
Success?
Yes.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, okay, I'm so glad. I know you just wanted to look at us for a little bit longer, try to figure us out a little bit before we get started. Well, part of, I guess, my introduction is also just answering these questions about freelance. And for me, why I work in freelance, and I think this is going to be so particular to me, right? So I'm going to try to broaden it a little bit. But in my experience, I started school, but every time I've been in school, I've also been playing a sport. Do we have any college athletes in here? It's not as common once you hit graduate studies. And I know it's a little bit hard for me to point you out, you know, if you do raise your hand. I took a break in the middle of my studies and continued to play sports and continued to work. You can kind of see where COVID happened. And I've had a couple babies along the way here too. And part of why I'm in freelance is because I've always had other things also going on that are kind of important in my life. That doesn't mean that you can't have these varying priorities. You know, just for me, these other aspects take up a large chunk of time. And so a big part of why I started working in freelance is because I traveled a lot and was playing sports. So I played rugby in college and then professional women's football afterward. And this takes a large chunk of time. And so for me, I wanted to have my career in e-learning design and development and museum design, but I needed something that I could do while doing other things. And so maybe for other people as well, you have competing priorities and there's something else that you're involved in. And freelance for me has made it possible for me to kind of pursue these other avenues in my life. Another big thing that I'm a part of, and this was starting as my project as a grad student, is the Disaster Discovery Center. So I started out as a volunteer responding to an email, and I've continued to stay on that, work with that group of people, and now I'm a member of the board for that nonprofit. So it's been a long journey for me. And I wanted to show you just a little bit about the Disaster Discovery Center. So I also spend some time on nonprofit work. And for me, this has also been touch and go. I've recently had another child. My husband currently is in kind of a demanding job. And so this is another avenue where my time is gone. And not as much this past year, but I've started working on it again. You can see there's a group of us here working on it. This is working on to get a disaster preparedness museum in Utah. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there's some fascinating things to explore and a lot of opportunities for me to be kind of at the forefront of this museum design, instructional design. And I encourage also those who are interested in this kind of work that there's opportunities to volunteer here, which is pretty neat. Let me go back to here. So that's another avenue, right, where I spend a lot of my time. Another reason for me doing freelance right now is because I'm looking for extreme flexibility. This is actually almost like a stopgap measure. I plan to work in a more typical full-time role later on. But right now, the way that I want to structure my lifestyle is also incorporating my young family. And there's lots of ways to go about raising your family, obviously. But for me, we also live in a place where there's a lot of museums, places to explore, things to do. And I don't know if Dr. West is there, but I just wanted to bond with him over our love of the Dutch transportation style. We do a lot of that here, so shout out to him. As you can see, our kids are pretty small right now, and so that's part of why my work in freelance is accommodating the type of schedule I want. And I want to be pretty clear, I'm not bringing in the big bucks right now. I know Dr. Howell mentioned that. My goal right now is to kind of stay at pace so that when I am ready to do something more full-time, that I can hit the ground running. And so I don't actually work that much. I try not to work very much right now, but I do continue to work, and I can answer more questions about that later. So next I want to have Sarah. Oh, I guess a couple things that I do as a freelancer. And yeah, this is pretty typical in e-learning design and development, but I've done a lot of work in creating things in Articulate Storyline and Rise. I've worked for other companies where I've done K through 12 lesson plans and development. And I'm working on topics all over the place, from hazardous waste management to construction companies, to accounting programs using technical software. And it's always a variety, which for me, I really enjoy. And oftentimes, the way that I need to structure my work is very setting a lot of expectations of what I'm ready to commit to, and to make sure that I'm communicating clearly what my specific capabilities are and what I am ready to contribute. And then also figuring out where I can't, how much time I'm not able to put into something, and making sure that that's, you know, set up in such a way that I'm able to protect the type of life that I'm trying to lead, but also contribute meaningfully in the workplace. So I've asked Sarah, who has so graciously agreed to also share, just to give you guys another perspective too of why some people might be looking for freelancers. And if you are interested in freelance, some ways to think about structuring yourself to get set up for that. And I'd actually love it if Sarah would spend just a little bit of time. Sarah, if you could introduce yourself, share a little bit about Blake Learning Solutions, answer these questions, and then we hope to have then just a lot of time for questions as well. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you, Chanel. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm honored that Chanel asked me to join. Like she said, I'm Sarah Blake. My husband, Casey, and I run Blake Learning Solutions together. I'm a BYU alumni too. I graduated in 2000 and I studied journalism. I was the managing editor of the Daily Universe back in my day. My husband graduated the same year with a film degree, and he specialized in sound film for movies, and he did the audio on the Singles Ward and all of the big Mormon movies in the early aughts. But we never met until 2008, and then we got married. And it's hard to tell the story of our business without telling a little bit of the personal side, because it's been mixed the whole time. So I graduated in journalism. I went on a mission right after, and the space from journalism made me realize that that wasn't what I actually wanted to do with my career. And I felt like it would kind of eat me alive, that my work would never be done. And I tend to be a workaholic, and I wanted something a little less demanding and more controllable. So when I came home from my mission, I ended up working at a nonprofit humanitarian aid organization doing marketing and strategic communication. And I really enjoyed that, but I kept thinking, I really want to try education. And I also Anyway, long story short, I thought I wanted to move toward educational entertainment, and I started going down that path, all of which led me to a master's of education from Harvard University. That, again, I was thinking they didn't even call it instructional design. I didn't even know the term instructional design, but I thought I like creating learning experiences, and the more fun and varied, the better. And so I ended up in this great program at Harvard. It was a one-year program that was a broad overview to a lot of educational principles, and I gravitated toward classes that were about instructional technology and especially educational media. And after that, I had right before that, I had been working for a federal government contractor in DC, where I was, once they figured out I was a good writer, they had me start writing curriculum. Again, I didn't even know the term instructional design. I was like, I guess I'm a curriculum developer. Anyway, I find this is really typical of a lot of people in this field. You are all smart enough to have figured it out sooner than many people, but so many instructional designers got here through the back door from they were working in HR and discovered what they really like is designing the training or any kind of writing communications. But a lot of us get here from an unorthodox path. Anyway, long story short, I was working for I kept having this happen where I ended up designing training solutions for companies, and eventually found out this is called instructional design, and there's a whole field you can study about how to do it. And our business was started in 2012, so we just celebrated our 11th year as a business. I had been hired back after moving to Boston and then to Los Angeles after I met my husband. I had been hired back by my federal contractor company in DC to be the lead instructional designer on a project for the Army. It was the Army's Sexual Harassment and Assault Response and Prevention Program. And they promised me that I could work remotely from California, where my husband was, and we were trying to start our family. And after a couple of miscarriages and 3 years of trying, I tell you this because again, the personal and professional has been really interwoven for us. I accepted this remote position, and then the Army kind of did a bait and switch and was like, thanks for accepting, you have to be here in DC all the time, or 3 weeks a month, which was not what we had planned or expected. The company that I was working for felt so bad about that they were trying to make it right. And my husband, again, was in media production. And so they asked if he would like to submit a proposal to produce some of the movies that were part of this, the training instructional videos were part of this contract for the Army. And so we worked together, we put together a proposal to produce this. It was a blind decision. The Army didn't know that their lead instructional designer was married to one of the proposed video producers, but the Army selected our proposal, and that was the start of our business. So in 2012, we won that contract, and we found out we were pregnant with our first child the same month, and that we would be moving from LA to DC. And all of a sudden we had a business. I kept working for that other business for a couple of years, and my husband ran the video project on his own. And in the years that I worked for that company, I had to scale up that team. I had to hire up to 40 people. And I interviewed so many different ISDs, and I worked with so many ISDs, and I learned that there's a lot of crappy ones out there, and that there's a lot of people with, even with advanced degrees, who are not as strong at just the practical aspects of getting it done, who maybe lack some of the comfort with the technology that's essential to be able to make good, rapid decisions for your clients. Anyway, after a couple of years, and after having our second child, we wanted more flexibility, and we had the confidence that we could do it ourselves. And I quit that and joined Casey in running the business. And that was that. It was a wild ride we started, I left that business, and I started working with just the two of us, and that we lived on our savings, and we didn't win any contracts, and we had to both go get other jobs. And then when we won a few little contracts, we did it on the side. It was a lot of hustling before we finally won a big contract with the Navy, and were able to hire some full-time employees. And now we have 10 full-time employees, and every month we pay 20 to 30 people total for different freelance projects. And we started out thinking we were going to be doing federal government work primarily, but it's really expanded. And I would say it's about 50% government and 50% corporate. Like Chanel mentioned, one of the things I love is that we have it's constant variety and the chance to work on so many different things. We've randomly ended up being for about 8 years producing most of the national materials about responding to bombing incidents. And we have a lot of weird expertise about bomb construction and prevention. We've also niche things like the reinsurance contracts in the reinsurance industry. I mean, all kinds of things. Chanel, I'm drawing blank on some of them, but it's been a lot of random things. And I actually find I really love that. The variety and the constant new challenge is part of what feels like a good fit for me in this role. So I'm probably talking too long, but one of the things we decided when we wanted to start the business was we realized that training is very often an afterthought, especially in government contracts. Everybody needs it. It's a part of almost every project, but they often don't think of it until a little too late. And that means our work is project-based, and that means it comes in waves. So freelancers are a really good fit for us because again, all of a sudden clients need something done and it's several months of a whole lot of work, and then that's over and we don't necessarily have the workload to sustain another full-time employee. So the freelancers have worked great. I also, because of my experience hiring all those people and hiring some lemons, I'm like, I know that what I think will really work well is people who have an introduction to the principles of instructional design, but most importantly, they're good communicators, they're good writers, and they're empathetic people who can put themselves in the shoes of learners and envision and understand what they don't know, what they need to know, and how to communicate it to them effectively. And we also really need people who are just open to experimenting with new technology and constant learning. And so Casey and I said, I really think if we can build a business of people with that, regardless of their background or their education level, we can succeed. And so that's kind of been one of the things, one of our founding principles that we've tried to do. And then the other thing, just because I am a working mom, we have 4 kids now, 10 to 4 years old. Is we really want to provide opportunities, especially for working moms, to have a flexible solution where they can use all their talents and contribute to something, but the level of demand on their lives they can control a little bit. So whenever we have a new freelancer start with us, we say, look, it's all going to be project based, and when something comes up, we'll reach out and say, here's the deal. We have this thing. You'd be working on a team with, it's often there's a full-time team member who works on it. And then the freelancer, we batch out the tasks and kind of divvy them out to whoever's willing. And then we say the task would be doing the initial analysis, writing a storyboard, and then developing the course in Articulate Storyline. And it needs to be done in the next 4 months. And I think it's probably going to be X hours a week or X hours total. Are you up for that? Does the timeline work for you? Are you able to take it on? And then our freelancers always have a choice to say yes or no. And if they say no because it doesn't work, then they're in no way disqualified for future work. We'll just reach out again. But that's been why it's important to us to have a good network, so that when we can respond flexibly to our clients' needs. I never want to, our answer when our clients come to us with something they want done, we always want to say, yes, we'll do it. We'll find a way to make it happen. And freelancers have been essential to us being able to do that while also protecting healthy work-life boundaries for our full-time staff. I would say the only people on our team who have the worst work-life boundaries are me and my husband. But that's us. That's what we keep ending up doing. I hope that's helpful. Chanel, is there anything else you want me to touch on?
No, all of that is so great. And I'm really thankful, Sarah, that you're willing to share some of your stories and experience and kind of how that personal is interwoven. I know that I'm doing exactly what I hope to be doing with my degree in IP&T. And this has been my plan from the beginning, right? And like I said, this is kind of in a way a temporary step, but the step that I wanted to take in my career. And so it's been great for me to come upon this situation. I've done freelance work for other companies and other situations as well. And it can be a lot of work sometimes in freelance to find work that can be part of your job. So it's nice to find places where you can come back to continue to have different work and build that relationship. My hope was that we would have a lot of time for questions. I am trying to make sure I can see the chat. Maybe if I stop sharing here. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. Oh, I'm seeing there's a lot more stuff in here. So I don't know the best way to go about doing this. I know you guys are probably pro with the various in-person and virtual speakers you've had, but we'd love to take a handful of questions as best we can, and you can ask us more about our experiences, our journeys to get to where we are, the state of instructional design. Sarah might have more to say about that field, but any of those kinds of questions we'd love to take.
Can I just yell it out?
No, no.
Are we on mute? or-
So my question is about, especially with contract or consulting work, is the scoping of projects. And so I don't know if that's more for Sarah or for Chanel, is that right? But really about how do you scope your projects? What do you look at to identify how many man hours this is going to take to actually create whatever you're going to be creating?
Yeah, let me say my comment real quick, and then Sarah, I think, is best suited to really answer this. I know from my perspective, it's important to know how much time things take me, or at least try to, and also be honest when I'm not really sure how long things will take me. And I know that comes with experience, and it depends on your skill set, depends on who you have working on different projects. And Sarah, I know, just sets these things up hardcore for her company. So
Yeah,
if you want to explain that further.
that's a super good question, and it gets to the heart of like so many of the challenges in this work. So I will say in general, especially earlier in my career, I hardly ever had the opportunity to help a client scope the project, or to do proper analysis, or to stay on board for evaluation at the end. So you're kind of brought in as a design development, like production partner, a vendor, where they're like, we already decided we need a 3-hour training on XYZ. And we already decided we want it to be an instructor-led training for groups of 30 or more, or whatever. They'll sometimes often you come in and they've already made up their minds, and they're like, this is what we're doing. Now, as soon as you start talking to them, there's a lot of better ways to do it, or like you would suggest some variations. Sometimes you can do that and you have a client and a contract arrangement that lets you be flexible and co-design. Other times you simply have to do what they are locked into. I put something in the chat, the Chapman Alliance. I don't know if anybody knows this. Brian Chapman is someone there in Provo, actually, who he has this e-learning consultancy, and a learning and development consultancy. They do an annual survey of people working in the field about how many hours it takes to develop different products. This is an amazing resource, and I use it all the time when I'm making estimates. It definitely just took us a few years of work and tracking our time, and to feel confident about our prices. And to be honest, I was just dead wrong a lot, where I said, yeah, we could probably make that in 60 hours, and it took like 90. And other times though, we're faster, so then we win. But it just takes time and practice. I would recommend tracking your own time and keeping records, including to the level of detail of how long it takes on different steps of the project. You might know that you're a really fast writer, but a slower e-learning developer, or vice versa. But over time, it'll add up to confidence in how long it'll take to do something. And so you can teach that to your clients. There's a big component of client education at the start of every project, where you have to, not everybody recognizes all the value that an instructional designer brings. You have to, especially with new clients, convince them of that, educate them of your value, and help them understand that it takes time and therefore costs money to do it well. And my final thing on the Chapman Alliance is, over time, our own company data has just validated the numbers in there. I would say, like, at first, I wasn't confident of that until I had a few years of experience. But I would say if it says in there that for an average level instructor-led training, it takes 43 hours development hours to produce 1 hour of content, that's pretty right. And you would always be safe building an estimate based on that. But again, you need to know your own things. And the factors that are likely to make a project take more or less time mostly have to do with the client. If you have a really persnickety client or an indecisive client, you will find you're spending a ton more time in meetings, a ton more rounds of revisions of every product, and all of that really adds up to change things. And there's a lot of project management that's essential to help you like make a profit on a project by managing the client's expectations and their understanding of how their requests might be consuming the time and taking you further away from completion, if that makes sense.
Talk to us more about your project management practices and how you hold these freelance designers accountable. How often are you meeting virtually, or is it mostly asynchronously?
Sure.
The software you use for project management?
Sure. Our whole company is remote. This is my basement. We always were, even pre-pandemic, and now we're even more spread out. And I love it. I think it's essential for families. Like it's not essential, but it's a huge blessing for families to have the flexibility. And I think if I didn't have a commute, if I did have a commute, I might not be working at all if I was forced to add that to my family schedule. But Chanel, do you want to say anything about your perspective on our project management? It's a little loosey-goosey and flexible, to be honest, but I'd love to hear what you think, and then I'll say more.
Yeah, I feel like it's very project specific and client specific. I feel like one thing that Sarah does really well is tailoring how we interact with people. That's very client specific because of the variety of content that we work on, right? Sarah said like government, construction, universities, like national academies. There's varying levels of expected professionalism, varying levels of budget, varying levels of needed timelines. And so I feel like the project management really varies, but usually there's an experienced full-time staff member who's going to make sure that this project steps are outlined, specified, or making sure that they're interacting with the client. As a freelancer, I will sometimes work on projects from beginning to end, and I will sometimes take specific aspects of a project. I might write the storyboard, or I might develop it, or I might work on something in video, or I might do some research, and it just depends. And usually there's someone who kind of knows everything that's going on and will assign out different roles to freelancers, other members that might be other full-time staff members that might be working on that project. And that seems like the basic outline to me.
Yeah, that's about right. We don't have a set project management software. We've researched them before. We have even made project management trainings for multiple clients, but we have yet to be convinced that like a single software, it will be the solution for all of our team. And when we've experimented with things, we've tried Asana and we use Microsoft Teams tools quite a bit. We found we were just spending a lot of time putting actions into a tracker that we could just keep a simple spreadsheet. It kind of was a sideways step from our processes in general. So we haven't had to do it much. That said, we just try to communicate well as a team. We are on Slack all the time, and we have a Slack channel for each project. And we usually have one kind of controlling document per project, it's often an Excel sheet where we have all the components and coming deadlines. And for clients that we have multiple projects, which is most of them after a while, we send weekly updates. And again, we have one full-time person who's tasked to track all of that. And I check in with each staff member at least weekly as well and keep things going. Like Chanel said, the way freelancers get involved varies. Chanel is someone we can trust with any part of a project, including directly reaching out to clients. But until we were confident of that, I had first you probably did a storyboard. Here's our path where we bring people on. If you're into copy editing, we have a copy editing team where because we do like copy editing for a variety of clients, and that is something that often comes in on like a Friday night and they need it done by Saturday morning. And I am not going to staff full-time people who have to do that. So I want to find freelancers who are like, cool, I can make a couple extra bucks on Friday. So
Weekends are good time, nights and weekends. We
Yeah.
can fill in those gaps. So.
Right, that's not everybody's cup of tea, but it is some people's. And so we have a broad team, and when there's a request for that, we reach out. And that's our first way that we test people and bring them on board. For people who are doing well with that or are interested, we have them also do e-learning testing. So for a global construction company that has like 85,000 employees, we are their lead LMS, learning management system, testing support vendor. So anytime they have a course, and there's hundreds, they send it to us first. We send it to our testing team. We thoroughly test, do quality control, make revisions, then handle the upload. And so we need a team of flexible freelance people for that too. That has been a really good exposure to a whole bunch of different courses. We do that specifically for that client, but we also just internally need to test each other's work on our team. Like, you become blind to your own work and you can't see, your own mistakes. So we farm every project out across the team and have people test and review. And that's given a really good exposure to a lot of different things. And then then we start trying more tasks. Storyboarding is a good simple one. And Chanel did great with that. And then she was so good at mapping out like her questions or what she recommended as next steps that I was like, will you just write that as an email we can send to the client? And then her emails were so thoroughly professional and detailed. I was like, once she had met the client in a meeting, I was like, you can just email them directly. And I 100% trust that you can do that. So that's kind of the path. And then it all depends on the freelancer's availability over time. So Chanel manages some things that like we know she'll be able to, her like level of work that she's up for right now allows her to commit from start to finish. Others, she contributes just a piece and then passes it back on to somebody else, and it works really well for everyone. There's always challenges in like spreading and dividing a project's tasks up across the team. It's very easy for things to fall through the cracks. We do have to manage more tightly on those, but it's worked out really well for us.
There are some more questions now in the chat, Chanel and Sarah.
Yeah. Okay. So how many freelancers we usually put on a project and what their different roles are? I probably what I said answers some of it. The most obvious tasks are writing a storyboard and programming e-learning. We usually use Articulate Storyline. We also do a lot of animation, custom animation using Beyond, and we're looking at other platforms. And that's something that we've been able to train people to do. But then a lot of editing and review of peers' work. Chanel, anything else come to mind?
I think that mostly covers, all of those things. I forgot to mention Beyond too. That's something that people definitely ask for too a lot.
Yeah, we do. I'm talking like all we do is e-learning, and that's not at all the case.
That's true. I was going to try to point that out as well. I'm like, that's mainly what I participate in, but there's a whole nother aspect.
Yeah, we with instructor-led materials, that would look like designing the slides, first mapping out a course, then doing the design of the slides, taking it to the next level. We bring in graphic designers when we need to, and then writing the instructor guide and any participant workbook, developing the handouts and kind of putting it all together. We also have had people help us pilot courses or attend client pilots of courses. And we do a lot of document preparation, and we do some instructional video work, which we always bring in freelance production assistants, and we use our freelancers to help us with pre-production and casting and things like that. For someone who's starting out with limited experience, what's the best way to find freelance jobs and contracts? Are there avenues one should avoid? Well, talk to me, first of all, if you're interested. We're always happy to grow our network. I think that Upwork is a really valuable resource right now. We've found good people on Upwork for a variety of roles. And if you make a good account on there, people might start reaching out with projects, and you can choose to take or not take as you wish. Chanel, anything you would add? Because you've been doing it. I've been looking at it with like growing the company perspective, and you've been more the freelancer.
In my experience, I've often applied for jobs and just tried to indicate somewhere that I'm actually not interested in this job. but I'm interested in contributing some of these skills that you're looking for. And I've gotten a number of interviews that way, and that's how I got my first job at Lucid. Was I applied for something and I was like, I actually don't want to do this, but I can contribute to what you're looking for. And they created and brought me on as a freelancer in that way. And then I've also responded to different emails from the IP&T department that they send out. And I've worked for some individual who was in business, who had an idea that needed to be developed. And I just worked, interviewed with him and said, hey, I can offer this type of assistance. And so those are the main ways that I've been able to find work. And then just by word of mouth found the Blakes, which worked out really well for me. But being already ready with having had experience, right, always helps. And then I saw a question up here a little bit about, in your experience, what does instructional design in a museum look like? And so for me, my work in this so far has not been as hands-on as I would hope, because part of where I'm at in the nonprofit process is pretty slow moving. And there's a lot of people who are doing their best to contribute, but it's difficult to move things forward when you're also working on finding funding, on finding those who can design places, a physical location, right? There's so many aspects that go into these kinds of projects before you can work on designing an actual museum. And like I said, my experience has been really intense in some moments and not as intense as of late. And so I hope to contribute some more in that area. But I guess that's not like a great answer to that question, but that's like what I can say so far. But I know the Blakes have done some stuff with museum and monuments as well, so.
Yeah, I would say my observation is the museum design field is challenging to get into. People get in it and they stay there for the rest of their careers. There's not that, it can be difficult to find a job, and but once you're in, you can be well networked pretty rapidly and producing cool stuff. We would love to be doing more of that as a company. We, a couple of years ago, won the contract to help Arlington National Cemetery create an education program. So from the ground up, we did analysis with them and created their strategic vision. And now we produce modules. If you go to education.arlingtoncemetery.mil, I think you'll see all our materials, and it's classroom materials and walking tours and a bunch of things. And that has been really fun. And then since then, we've also made some materials for like a historic beach in Miami. It can look like anything. And I found that instructional designers are more often a little more creative and more flexible and more practical than trained museum designers are, if that's okay to say. A lot of them, it's just kind of a slow moving field where our team will produce stuff fast and get it out there. Training needs are often fairly urgent, right? And you're trying to solve problems for companies and get stuff out there. Museum design is a different pace. And I've seen projects take like 2 years to have a detailed plan, only the plan, not the materials yet. So it's just a thing to be aware of. I think it's good to try to get it on your resume if that's what you want to be doing, contributions in whatever way you can. But those are some difficulties that I've seen.
Yeah, I did want to add one more thing, is that I guess I did do some of this work on my IP&T project, and a lot of this museum design was based a lot on doing extensive evaluation, I think, in a sense, creating something, having people experiencing it, being able to observe, continue to change and adapt, especially when you're trying to create something that's a meaningful learning experience. Some of those things you can observe, some things you need to survey. And it's kind of it seems to me at least, a very iterative process. And that's another thing I would mention too that really helped me grab freelance jobs later on. And I know you guys do this even more so now with your portfolio work, but having that project base was huge in being able to say, I've already contributed in a meaningful way. I've already worked with clients, and I have experience being in conversation to decide how to do something, right? Like a needs analysis. And I've taken something through the full spectrum of steps to kind of create something that can be impactful. And so I know you guys kind of already do that. The IP&T program, I feel like, is well set up that way. All right, I know there's more questions. I make sure I didn't miss any other ones.
To Echo's questions about are some of our freelancers user experience experts. We have someone on our team who has a user experience certificate. It's Wes Chanel. And I would say we rely on his insights all the time. And the more you understand that stuff, the more valuable you can be. I think those are often kind of siloed, instructional design, user experience, siloed and separate, but they're essential skills to understand how people interact with information, right? So I think it's a super valuable skill to strengthen. And yes, we are following developments with AI and ChatGPT. And we had a team meeting a while ago, right after ChatGPT came out, and it was unsettling. It was, Chanel, were you there for that one? It was kind of
I wasn't for that one. Yeah.
It was kind of like upsetting. Everyone was a little bit upset and unsettled. And I do believe it is going to cause some disruption, but I don't think it's the end of everything. But I think it's important for us to stay abreast of that and think about ways to adapt the way we work so that we're responsive to client needs. We've already told the team, like, use ChatGPT. It is great for some initial tasks. Like if you're having to just research a field, you can, in a minute, ChatGPT can give you a summary of the research, which you can read, and then you can validate that yourself by doing a little additional research. But it can shorten your research time by hours. You still have to use and apply your own good judgment, but it could also help you make a good initial course outline. We are not yet using it for storyboarding courses, but I used it to help me write a proposal this week. And I think it's worth thinking about ways that those technologies can help save you time so that you can use your experience and human instincts and judgment to further enhance the learning experience. I also think it's really important to recognize that people's patience and attention spans are shrinking, especially for accessing information. And I think the days of like all of this training existing in a packaged e-learning course that they can only access through an LMS, which is always a terrible experience, are going to end. And we need to be thinking of, like, rather than a packaged course, our client probably needs really a knowledge management structure that's easy, that's like comprehensively indexed and easily searched, more just-in-time learning kind of solutions. And I think it's important to be able to share those ideas with clients. Again, you don't always get to help them shape their thinking to that level, but it's super valuable to be able to at least help expand their view of what training can look like. Sorry, Chanel, do you want to add anything?
As you know, we have like 3 minutes left. So boy, this has been wonderful, but let's wrap it up in the next 3.
Okay, looking at for salaries. So we're often bringing in people with less experience, but we're in the $20 an hour range up to 40 or so is our highest for some more experienced people. You can probably get more working on Upwork or things like that, but then you're having to market yourself, get the work, and you're kind of bound by the terms the client sets. And we see ourselves as being in there to protect our freelancers from some of that so they can set the terms of their own work experience. But I hope that's helpful. The geography doesn't really play into the salary range for us. Although when we recently had somebody do a salary analysis for a full-time team, and we decided to, even for folks who are working in areas of the country where the income is typically lower, we're working on world-class projects for big clients and government agents. And so we pay like national capital area rates for whatever it's worth. I think that's going to become more the norm, as like remote work is more the norm.
I know for me, part of what I feel like I've gained is having a chance to learn and develop skills. I know we're kind of out of time, but I actually didn't spend very much time learning the technical skills in school. It was just offered when I couldn't take it, with my sports practices and volunteer work that I was involved in. And so part of my learning, I feel like, has also been gaining skills that I wouldn't otherwise be paid to gain, right, is a benefit.
Yeah, that is part of our thing. We're like, here's an Articulate license and you can learn it and our team is here to help. And a project, it's so much easier to learn those tools if you have an actual project to work on compared to just like watching tutorial videos. So it's part of the experience. I love looking at people's portfolios. To Ross's question about creating portfolios. Yeah, I love it. And I think the best interview is when you get a chance to show off a project that you did and explain your thinking about it. And that's how someone will really learn who you are as an instructional designer and how you think and how you can contribute.
One last question. It's International Women's Day.
That's
And,
right.
We have is there, and both of you are moms and you have children. Is the freelance population a good mix of both men and women, or is it mostly women? Not that matters.
Great
both
question.
skills.
For us, it's been mostly women.
More flex, and just because it fits their circumstance,
Right. I will say if in like media production, there's a lot of men freelancing there and that's really normal. It's how people put together their careers by maintaining the flexibility to be like, I'm going on this shoot for 2 weeks and that shoot for a week. And it's very common there.
Very good. Boy, this has been super, super helpful. Wow. And Chanel, thank you for being on the channel.
Diana,
for
thanks
letting
so
me be
much for
here.
having us.
And just so you both know, we will be considering digesting, chewing on this presentation throughout the week. The 30 students that are in this seminar will be responding to 2 of our students who are moderators. There will be a number of questions. So this conversation carries on not just through the day, but through the next week. We want to thank you, and we're grateful you're one of our proud alumni, Chanel. And Sarah, thank you. And I think you'll be getting a lot more applicants from who's IP&T grads now. So
Awesome. I put my email address in the chat. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who wants to.
very good. And
Got
we
it.
have this recorded, and so this will also be on our department YouTube channel. Very good. We'll close with a word of prayer, and I've asked Will if you will, and then we're grateful for Bernice. Is it Bernice and Chanel? I mean, not Chanel, and Lexi that are being our moderators this week. So, and Brianne. Okay, go ahead, Will.